Live from Studio 550, it's McGraw in the Morning on the Big 550 KTRS.
The book is called Good Morning, Mr. Mandela. It's a memoir by Zelda LaGrange. Zelda, you are a white Afrikaner, grew up in segregated South Africa, and you grew up to become Nelson Mandela's right-hand person. Good morning, and welcome to St. Louis and KTRS Radio.
Thank you very much for having me, McGraw. Great speaking to you.
Let's talk Turkey here. You grew up in the segregated South Africa in a family that referred to your future boss as a terrorist?
That's correct, yes.
How did you, this is why the book is written, but give us a little sense of what it was like when you first told the family that you were going to work for Nelson Mandela.
Well, because I took the job because it was really a logistical arrangement. You know, it was out of logistic consideration that I applied for the job in the union buildings or in the president's office at that time. And I think when I got the job and I was successful in my application, my parents didn't really think that I would ever really meet the president. Leave alone then working alongside him. But I myself, didn't think it was close to him. I thought it was just an administrative position and it wouldn't really entail interacting with him.
Take us back. Why did your family think Nelson Mandela was a terrorist?
Well, to white South Africans at the time, we instituted and maintained apartheid, and to us, he represented the fear. He represented the challenge to white superiority in South Africa. So to my people, we were brought up to believe that he was the enemy.
How long after you started working with him? Because you had to change. You clearly changed, and you clearly loved the man, and which is sort of the reason for the book. But when did your attitude start to change? One, you had to deal with that, but two, you had to deal with the realization that what you thought all those years was wrong.
Well, that was the day that I really met him, the McGraw, that it started changing, because the man, or what I knew about the man, was completely the contrast. When I met him the first day, he extended his hand to me. He was kind. He was sincere. He smiled. He had really this kindness in his eyes and this infectious smile. And immediately he destroyed my defenses by speaking to me in Afrikaans, my home language, the language that was seen to represent the oppressor. So, immediately I was shocked, and I started thinking that what I may have been brought up to believe may not be all correct. And the changing or the questioning really only started that day. And then obviously a long process of self-realization and learning started from that day.
Did your family ever come around?
Yes, they did. And not only my family, but their friends and family of their friends, so it's had a ripple effect on the entire, on my entire community and people around me.
And he was more than a boss to you. I mean, you called him Hulu, which is the word for grandfather. So how was your personal relationship with him?
Yes, well, it was a very warm relationship, and it was trying to describe it, I refer to it as a grandfather-granddaughter relationship. I deeply cared for the man, and he cared for me. So I was spending so much time with someone, their relationship obviously evolves, So we became, as I describe it in the book, we became codependent on one another. I was really dependent on his emotional stability around me, and he was dependent on me physically to maintain his life and the order around him.
The book is called Good Morning, Mr. Mandela. Zelda LaGrange, our guest. When you told him, I'm sure you must have had a conversation with him in some quiet evening and said, when I grew up, my parents told me you were a terrorist. What was his response when you told him how you were brought up?
Yes, we did have that conversation, and he actually laughed about it and found it quite entertaining. But also knowing South Africa and the history, and he knew very well that it was the system that dictated apartheid to us. he laughed at it and he thought it was very funny, but he also knew, that it was incorrect of us to think that, or to believe at that time even that he was a terrorist, or, that he was really the person to represent that kind of fear in our eyes.
Were you with him during his final days?
No, I wasn't. Unfortunately not. As you'll read in the book, towards the end, things became very unpleasant. Unfortunately, I didn't see him up to the last day. The last time I saw him was on the 11th of July last year.
Even though you left to become a full-time employee of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still a part-time employee of the foundation now, but I do lots of other things. I have a few part-time jobs that keeps me busy, and obviously now being busy with a book, I don't have another full-time job.
Yeah, I don't know if you can answer this question, but America today still struggles with race. Does South Africa still struggle the same way the U.S. struggles with race?
Yes, and very interestingly, we've had this debate lingering in the public domain for the past few weeks again. You know what, you'll never change an entire society, but one of the great things that Nelson Mandela taught me is it's easier to change other people than it is to change yourself. So we have to start with the self before blaming people around us. You have to start changing yourself, and people have to take responsibility for themselves, and that's what we find in South Africa. People still accuse people of racism and so on, but yet they themselves have not gone through the changes. So it's something to remember. But the book is indicative of change and of love and hope. And if I could change the way I did it over the past 20 years because of the influence of Nelson Mandela in my life, it's in anyone's ability to change.
You had the best seat in the world. How was it that this man who was born and spent so many years in jail and was oppressed, how did he keep such good cheer, and how did he keep such a good positive outlook?
He said on many occasions that forgiveness is a choice. So, I watched him over 16 of the 19 years I spent with him. We worked day in, day out, and I saw he never had any bitterness. It was a decision, for him to change and to always choose to forgive and to extend the hand of friendship. They say you can't shake a hand with a clenched fist. And that was really what I saw. He always opened his hand and his heart to his enemy.
You've met so many people through the years being his right-hand person. Share with us some of the more memorable people who you've met, world leaders or celebrities.
Well, because I'm in the U.S. now and in New York at the moment, I'm reminded of President Clinton. We are obviously very close to them because he was also in office the same time as Mr. Mandela. But there's so many wonderful people. I saw Mayor David Dinkins of New York the other night, and he also shared such a warm friendship with Mr. Mandela. So there's so many people. I'm also particularly reminded of Brad Pitt's meeting with Mr. Mandela. Mr. Mandela not knowing who Brad Pitt was. His entire life revolved around politics, not around celebrities or the entertainment industry. And how gracious Brad was when he realized that Mr. Mandela didn't know that he was actually Brad Pitt.
Zella LaGrange is our guest. The book is called Good Morning, Mr. Mandela. I got 30 seconds. Was there anybody Nelson Mandela didn't like? Was there any world leader who he said, I'm just not that crazy about him?
Yes, sadly, yes. President Mubarak from Egypt, yeah.
All right, fair enough. She names names. Zelda LaGrange, the book is Good Morning, Mr. Mandela, a memoir. Zelda, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me. Great speaking to you.
You got it. Back in a moment. An extraordinary life.
Yes.
Walks into the secretary's office one day and walks out the right-hand person to Nelson Mandela.
Right, and a white Afrikaner.
Yeah, what an extraordinary life she's led. The book is called Good Morning, Mr. Mandela. We are back. Good morning, St. Louis, 7:30 here, Big 550 KTRS.
Hi, this is Jeff